In the summer of 1991, on what I thought was going to be the last day of the last summer vacation of my life, I remember thinking, what should I do? I really don't want to waste this day because this isn't going to happen again until I'm 65. Well, long story short, I decided to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I don't regret it one bit. TMNT1 is about damn near perfection. Even by today's standards, it is gritty as hell. The lighting is drab, it's always overcast, and there's stuff in this movie that you would probably not get away with nowadays. While the movie is not without its quirky and funny moments, these are vanishingly overshadowed by moments of poignance and introspection. The lion's share of that credit goes to Master Splinter himself, whose savvy speeches and willingness to offer help while in his own darkest hour make him a most righteous character. His speech to Raph in the first act is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. The way the music synchronizes to it is sublime, especially on the part about anger being an unconquerable enemy. I mean, I don't want to be too quick to declare Splinter's testimony as completely flawless, mostly because of this line.
Old fathers care for their sons.
Yeah, if only. He doesn't really get to bust out his rat food to the same extent as, like, say, Mr. Miyagi of the Karate Kid. In fact, I think his most impressive moves happen while he's still in his cage. I still remember people, well, I say people, but it was really just one kid in my high school. He said, "Splinter sucks." And I was like, okay. The Turtles, on the other hand, are a nearly constant fountain of humor, while also having their own brushes with the more disagreeable aspects of adulting. We have Raph, who's a bit of a hothead, but not violent by nature.
These JV lowlifes need to be taught a lesson.
Not like that, they don't.
Mikey, who's like the surfer class clown dude. Donnie, who's more reserved but extremely intelligent. And Leo, who's just the straight man, I guess. I often tend to think of groups of four as corresponding to the four elements. Fire, water, earth, air. Fire, water, earth, air. Fire, water, earth, air. Fire, water, earth. You get the idea. We also have April and Casey, both of whom are a little quick to warm up to the idea of mutant turtles in the world. April much less so, but I don't think the movie ever intended to gouge out that avenue anyway. You know, exploring the whole how would humans really react and all that. April and Casey were like main tier characters, so they couldn't afford to waste too much time worrying about it. As someone who watched the cartoons growing up, I got so used to April being on Channel 6 that I was a bit weirded out by how she closed her opening speech in TMNT1.
April O'Neil, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
I also thought using the phrase isolated incidents twice was kind of funny, but what else were they supposed to do? I love this cut from handing off the wallet to just a crowd of people walking, totally oblivious to it, and this shot of the truck getting robbed. I don't see a cut here. This is pretty impressive, especially since you don't hear anything. Like, yeah, I'm sure it was dubbed over, but still. Then, of course, we have Foot Clan headquarters, which kind of looks like the Paper Street House and Fight Club, doesn't it? On her way out, April spots a rat. Thumbs up for establishing continuity.
11th and Bleecker?
She gets attacked and then saved, and through this scene we get what may very well be the best 5 seconds of a blank screen in any movie ever. You know the Turtles' introduction is coming, but damn if they don't delay it for as long as they possibly can. And then we get a triumphant cheer from each of them.
Awesome! Righteous!
Okay, so is it just my imagination, or is Leo mouthing the words Bossa Nova here?
Bossa Nova!
Even though it's supposed to be Donnie saying it? I don't know. It's not just the Turtles, though. Every character in this movie gets a great entrance. April's first appearance is on a television, which is synonymous with her career and role in the movie. Splinter's first appearance is just his hand, symbolizing that he is the guiding hand. Casey gets kind of a 2-for-1, his first appearance falling into frame from above, and then this appearance. Just totally badass. Shredder's first appearance is as a silhouette lurking in the shadows, although I think some would argue that this is his true intro shot right here. Also, what is this thing he throws at the TV, anyway? Like, you think it would be a ninja star or something, but this thing looks like the torn-off finger of a mummy. So I know we're supposed to be comparing the two, 3 movies here, so maybe this would be a good time to jump over to the second movie and talk about its intro a little bit. In the opening series of shots, we see a bunch of people eating pizza. So many people are eating pizza here, it's almost hard to believe. And you can't help but ask yourself, maybe they're eating pizza because the Turtles went public and it's really popular now? Like, you don't know. But pizza was already popular, so maybe they're just happy that crime is down? Or maybe it's a Saturday. It's anybody's guess. Shortly in, we are introduced to the pizza delivery boy Kino, who's kinda, just listen to this.
Which one of you lucky girls gets a ride with me tonight?
So rightfully, one of the girls responds, "Dream on, dweeb," and then he replies, "Okay, but when I do, I'll dream of something a little thinner." And then he just scoots away. I mean, she looks fine to me. I don't see what the... Never mind. And look, I'm not saying Casey Jones was Casanova or anything. He was definitely stumbling. But his absence in this movie cannot go unmentioned, even if it is largely due to outrage from angry parents, who I'm sure were thrilled to see Chief Stearns come back, but had nothing to say when Raph encouraged kids to eat apples.
Gosh, I do hope there's more of them.
Just saying. Kino maybe slightly redeems himself with his fighting skill here, but the real reason for this sequence, as we all know, is about to reveal itself, and here it is, folks. God damn. This freeze frame? I seriously think this might be even better than the one in the first movie. What follows is easily one of the most hilarious fight sequences in the trilogy. Man, do I have to call this a trilogy? So one of the first things you might notice here is that the turtles are not really using their weapons as much. Instead, they are using yo-yos, rubber snakes, poofy bats, and combat cold cups. I still remember getting a small flipbook of that scene from a McDonald's or something. I wonder if any of those are still around. How much do those go for? Part of the reason for the use of non-weapons might have been because the first movie was rebranded in the UK to Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, not ninjas. And the use of the nunchucks in particular really set off the bells and whistles over there. And even though Mikey used sausages in place of nunchucks in this movie, they saw fit to cut that scene out anyway. Was I the only one whose picture would freeze for about a quarter of a second here when watching the VHS tape? Don't know if that was just a glitch on our copy or if that went out everywhere. TMNT2 did have an edge on the first movie in that they didn't have to take time introducing April to the Turtles. She just already knew them. Yeah, but now they gotta introduce them to Kino, you dumbass.
You dumbass.
And can we talk about this sequence where Splinter introduces the Turtles to her in the first movie, though? Setting the characters up against a black background, like, it almost feels like a stage play, and it's magnificent. But back on the subject of April. I love how bummed April sounds here when they have to leave.
Oh.
She sounds like a kid that just got told to turn off the video games and go to bed. Both movies conspicuously never had her in her signature yellow raincoat, except for a few minutes at the beginning of the first movie, and even then it wasn't form-fitting. Anyway, the other complication was that Judith Hoag... It's Judith Hoag, you dumbass.
You dumbass.
The actress playing April in TMNT1 was replaced by Paige Turco in TMNT2. Part of the reason for this had to do with stunt people in the first movie getting hurt on the job and subsequently just shipped away, and Judith was not a fan of that, and I can't say I blame her. While I did miss Judith's gravelly performance and her drawing skills, and the fact that she wrote the word bathroom on one of them, there was certainly nothing wrong with Paige's take on the character either. She's a bit more, how do I put this, prissy than Judith was, but she gets the job done, and she was well received enough to come back for the third movie. Not that that's saying much. Sometimes the jokes can be weird, like the shell puns. Is Shell of a Good Hit really the best one? I'm kind of partial to We Can Really Shell It Out myself, but I guess replacing hell with shell is funnier because hell was like still a cuss word back then. Does anybody still call them cuss words? The other one that always puzzled me was in TMNT2, this whole aerobics thing. I think the scene is meant to convey the hardships of constantly being recognized as a news reporter, but is April really jumping around in her news reports? I'm not sure I grasp the meaning of this exchange, other than that you just probably hear a lot of really weird things from people when you get to be well known like that. I don't think any of you guys have ever been that weird though. While I would say that the Turtles operate as more of a team in the second movie than they do in the first, I think their individual characteristics stand out more in the first. There's a really obscure scene in the first movie where April is talking about how silly it is to lose money on keeping her father's business going just because she misses him, and Donnie kindly tells her, no it isn't. With the weight of his own father figure, Splinter, having just gone missing, Donnie's empathy meter goes up a few ticks on this exchange alone. I would say TMNT2 is better about letting Donnie cut loose with his nerdy side, which the first movie doesn't really do at all. And I would say in some ways Donnie is actually the main character of TMNT2. The original secret of the ooze was supposed to be that it originated from a meteorite or aliens or some such thing, but ultimately they left it as it was just an accident, and Donnie takes that the hardest. The most important line in this movie, possibly the entire trilogy, is Splinter's words of assurance back to him. Do not confuse the specter of your origin with your present worth, my son. Going into the other three Turtles in detail like this would not yield as much. Raph was arguably the main character of the first movie, even though that spot was originally slated for Mikey. This conversation between Mikey and Donatello was meant to set up Mikey's arc, in which he was at first dismissive of Donnie's concern about Splinter's age. The idea was that Mikey would grow more aggrieved after Splinter's capture, eventually culminating in him shouting Splinter's name from a rooftop. Yep. But since that didn't happen, we got Raph instead. But this at least helped to move along the Leo-Raph arc, which is right at the heart of the movie. And it gave Leo something else to do besides slice pizza and score the one shot on Shredder that they actually managed to get. It's interesting that even though Raph gets the big lecture about anger, it's actually Leo who succumbs to it when Shredder taunts them about Splinter maybe being dead. I guess you could say that Shredder's undoing also happened as a result of his anger. If the Leo-Raph story is the heart of the movie, then this scene is the spirit of it. Hitching on one of Mikey's lines early in the movie,
Well, this is light meditating.
we have further proof that this was almost his story. But either way, this is the tick that really brings the Turtles together, and they are inseparable from here on out, except for when this happened. I just love that the closing shot of this movie is Raph hugging Splinter. Thinking back to Splinter's words earlier,
Do not forget them, and do not forget me.
it just makes this little payoff all the sweeter. I haven't really talked much about Shredder yet, have I? In between the two movies, he's really not that different. I mean, after watching him for years in the cartoons, seeing him like this as a real flesh and blood person in that freaking costume was, to put it delicately, terrifying. Even Tatsu has a bit of a time with rolling back the cape over those bladed shoulder pads. There are times when Shredder does some pretty weird shit though, especially in the second movie, and a lot of it has to do with Taka and Razor. When he sees them for the first time, he challenges them to a duel. Like, what would this fight have even looked like? Either Shredder would have been crushed, again, or they would have died by 1,000 Shredder cuts. Neither way works out too good for him. After finding out that they're babies, Shredder wants to dispose of them, but Krang, no seriously, this guy was originally going to turn out to be Krang. How cool would that have been? Tells him they still have other attributes, and the two of them together lift a tow truck. And Shredder is impressed. But shouldn't this have been impressive enough? That thing's like 4 inches thick. And then there's this scene where they spring the trap and are about to make turtle kebabs. Okay, that plan got foiled, obviously. But if it had worked, then what was the plan for Taka and Razor then? He went to all the trouble to kidnap Krang and have these mutants made just so he could kill the turtles some other way? What about freak against freak? Why am I thinking so much about this anyway? Consider this moment when Tatsu tries to take over, thinking Shredder is dead, and he's all like, "Let any who challenge step forward." Shredder steps in, he's like, "I challenge." I can't help but think he was probably standing outside the door listening in, waiting for a good time to make a big entrance and be funny about it. I mean, that's no less believable than him just happening to show up at that moment. I love how Tatsu is so stunned that he almost calls him Master Splinter.
Master Shredder.
There is a weird sort of normalcy about Shredder in this movie. Standing around holding flowers and shit, taking random walks, getting hugs, disciplining his sort of kids,
Put that down!
and owning up to his mistakes.
I have failed.
I don't know what I'm getting at here. I guess if you've seen my Karate Kid 3 video, you know I went out of my way to sympathize with John Kreese. I definitely do not sympathize with the character of Shredder at all, with some of the shit he's done, but I guess I've just started to realize I have a penchant for scrounging for any shred of humanity I can find in villains. It's an interesting exercise, not necessarily fruitful, but it can be fun. I was a pretty dumbass kid. And I was like 15 or 16 at this point. When April comes home and she says the names of the turtles out loud while cleaning up, I thought she was just reminiscing about how much she missed them. I didn't realize she was cleaning up the stuff they had left sitting around and saying who each item belonged to. Seriously, stop climbing the spiral stairs in those shoes, girl. Of course, I have my share of misunderstood quotes from these two movies as well, including,
What did you expect? I come out quoting Macbeth?
Turtle Rebecca!
It gets a lot worse than that. My idea of arguing against violence in video games, which I used to do, was to say, Street Fighter 2 is 45 seconds long, Final Fantasy 4 is 40 hours long. Which would you rather pay $60 for? Like, what does that even have to do with it? But if I were to take a gander at forming an argument against violence in the media today, I would probably go for the angle of that violence has consequences, and oftentimes those consequences are not properly portrayed. I still remember one day my dad was burning some wood in a barrel, and he said to me, "Don't get too close to the fire. It's not like those video games where you just come back from it." Fortunately, even though it's scarce, TMNT1 does actually show these consequences. For most of the movie, the Foot Clan are dehumanized by the masks they wear, except there is this one scene where Tatsu beats up one of them, and another guy removes his mask. This is instrumental to Danny's arc in the story, but it's also an easily missable show of just what can happen. Just look at this shot of Donnie here. Poor guy. Yeah, violence has consequences, but at least the movie is showing us that it does, even if it's only a little bit. It goes without saying that TMNT2 is the sillier of the two movies, with the violence being more of a slapstick nature. Why is it that when the Super Shredder destroys these pillars that are like 18 inches in diameter, they don't say anything? But when he smashes this relatively flimsy cross of 2x4s, they're like, "Whoa!" So I was saying TMNT2 is sillier, and here are a few examples. Splinter talking about his old-ass geriatrics.
Where's Splinter?
Coming.
Mikey kissing a mop. Bart Simpson glasses. The phone call with April, and one of the few times you get to see them actually act like teenagers. The way Tonka tilts his head as he greets his mother for the first time. Do you really have to measure the flower to know that it's unnaturally big? Raph throwing a tire. You know how heavy those things are? Dioxazine. Inconsistent pronunciation of Tonka and Razor.
Toka. Razor.
Mikey rapping in triplets before it was cool.
You like what you saw?
The Foot Clan trainer guy who looks like the lead singer of Third Eye Blind. And of course, this. For every such moment like that, there's an equal and opposite dark moment that sets the tone in the first movie. The shot of Raphael looking out over the city, April's house and store being set ablaze and shot in such a way that the reflection of the flames looks like tears on her face. Ominous shots of panda bears while the adults are bickering, newspaper headlines that simply read, "It's worse," and this frickin' scream. Holy crap. But then I could do the opposite and point out silly moments from the first movie, such as the bubblegum girl, the jarring tonal shift of Raph versus Casey with the trumpet call, Mikey chewing on what looks like a nail file, I know this comes as a blow,
You say that again, Chuck.
the rabbit race on TV where the snow is falling up,
Ninja kick the damn rabbit.
the best use of indubitably that I've ever heard,
Will I ever see you guys again?
Indubitably.
Tatsu golf ball, Leo's move from the video game, Casey chopping vegetables with Leo's katana. Now that's what I call a headbutt. Donnie losing track of what letter they're on when he just said funkoid 2 seconds ago.
Funkoid.
All right, here goes. What are we on?
And Donnie in a straw hat.
Ninja cowboy.
This fight goes on for a while, it's intense, it's fun, and the music sounds like a frickin' Dragon Quest boss fight.
One of these guys must know where they're holding Splinter.
However, when tasked with pointing out dark moments from TMNT2, I find myself falling a little short. I mean, I guess Bloody Shredder, like, is that seriously blood? There's also the whole existential quandary that Donnie goes through, but that's kind of really all there is. But dark or light, silly or serious, these two movies have no shortage of parallels between them. I love how I keep completely leaving TMNT3 out of the picture here. Trust me, we'll get to it. Anyway, what was I saying? Parallels. Splinter's first line in TMNT1 is, "Were you seen?"
Were you seen?
And it's one of his last lines in TMNT2.
Were you seen?
Mikey makes April laugh by imitating Sylvester Stallone. Mikey makes April laugh by imitating Rick Blaine from Casablanca. Turtles have to hide in April's house. Turtles have to hide in April's house. Raph falls through a roof. Donnie falls through a roof. Splinter tells the origin story to April. Splinter tells the origin story to Kino. Mutant speaks its first word.
Pizza.
Mutant speaks its first word.
Mama, babies.
Raph argues with Leo, leaves the group, and gets himself in trouble.
Pork rind.
Pork rind.
Raph argues with Leo, leaves the group, and gets himself in trouble. April talks to a guy on the film crew and he smiles. April talks to a guy on the film crew and he smiles and looks off wistfully. This look right here. Oh my god, this is totally me. Foot Soldier follows Raph to the Turtles base. Casey follows Dan to the Foot Clan base. You know, it's like poetry, sort of. It rhymes. Also, I know those last two were both from TMNT1. Oops. I've not really been keeping like a score or anything on this, but just from writing what I have so far, I'm leaning heavily toward TMNT1 being my favorite of the two movies. But that still leaves the question of where TMNT3 falls. Do you really want to know? I don't think you do. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 is the worst thing ever made by a human being. The turtle skin looks like gonorrhea. Their introduction is stupid as fuck. The one-liners suck so much pubic hair that I can't even be asked to show or quote them, and this?
Absolutely. Shall we?
No, just don't. The villains are just a couple of toilet biscuits, and this guy looks like he walked off the set of Braveheart Men in Tights. If I wiped my ass with a piece of paper and mailed it to Hollywood Studios, it would get green-lighted faster than this would. During the last fight of the movie, there's this part where Leo is fighting Dogen from Lost over here, and he just randomly starts baring his teeth at the guy. And I remember my first time watching this, I was laughing my ass off, like, what is going on with Leonardo here? Like, that's how desperate I was to pilfer any sort of enjoyment from this fucking thing, to laugh at Leo showing his teeth. I'll give it this much, some of the moves and the fight choreography is actually pretty decent. I just wish I actually gave a shit about what was going on. And what the fuck happened to Splinter's voice?
No time for this scientific debate.
The same thing that happened to the rock biter, I guess.
Good, strong hands.
Cowabunga. Cow a fucking piece of dog shit. TMNT3 is a diarrhea Slurpee. It's a Twizzler that's been stuck up a rhinoceros's butthole for the last 12 years. It's a McFart burger with a side of balls. I would rather sniff a bubbly fart from E. Honda's butt swamp. I would rather drink stir-fried chipotle from Brett Favre's jockstrap. I would rather watch Logan Paul take a shit.
I have a toilet.
I've had more fun shaving my balls with a weed eater. I would rather have Diddy Kong stick his tail up my ass. I would rather have a mashed potato and diarrhea sundae. This thing is a Snickers bar caked in cuck. It's a shiitake shit shake topped with Jar Jar Binks' earwax. I would rather get a hand job from Joe Biden. I would rather play Paper Mario Sticker Star. I'd rather watch Full House. This abomination can suck a fuck. It can fuck a suck with a shuck of ground chuck, cause it's shit out of luck. So it can cuck Donald Duck while sucking on a garbage truck stuck to a thunderstruck fuck. Oh, damn it. Oh, that one was really good, too.